Hello everyone and welcome to my Apex Legends Season 16 tier list. If you don't know who I am, I'm an Apex Legends content creator with over 110,000 followers on TikTok, and I'm growing very fast both on here and over on Twitch. I'm a very good player, but I'm not an Apex Pred or anything. However, that doesn't make my takes any worse, as I'm always taking and using other people's opinions of those high level players, and I'm taking them into account. So for this tier list, I'll be putting legends between the tiers S and E tier. I'm basing them off how good they are used by the best players. Just before we get into the video, if you could hit that subscribe button or even just a like, it would be much appreciated as I'm pushing for monetization here on YouTube. Also, at the time of recording this, I'm very sick with pneumonia, so if my voice isn't 100% right, there's that. Alright, let's get into the E tier legends. First up, Rampart, who in my opinion is the worst legend in the game. Ever since her release, she has never been a great legend, and I would say even the Rampart mains would tell you this too. Personally, her ult is the only good ability about her kit. Her walls could be good if they rose quicker, and her passive is borderline useless as LMGs are the worst weapon class in the entire game. Not only that, but she is outclassed in her own class. CAUSTIC is better even though not being great himself. WATTSON offers way more support to her team, and comparing Rampart to Catalyst would be an absolute slaughterhouse. She isn't far away from being a good legend though, she just needs a passive rework and a tactical buff. The second legend to join her in E tier is REVENANT, which I don't feel like is a surprise, but many people at least seem to be. The only reason REVENANT is above Rampart is because their useless ability is their ult rather than their passive, so you can utilise Revenant's kit more in game. But yes, Revenant's ultimate is dodgeable. You send a massive worldwide pulse that you're entering death protection, so you get third partied 100% of the time. This is all so you can make a play with 100 health just to get sent back to the totem with no health after getting rolled with your not so subtle ult. Revenant does have an awesome tactical though, definitely underused and overlooked. His passive is okay, but for me needs a buff or an increased speed. I think an ult rework is needed and would push Revenant to a much higher tier on everyone's list if that happened. On to D tier, and the first legend here is going to be a huge surprise to most people, it's OCTANE. I can't for the life of me believe I've rated this guy so highly in the past. OCTANE's only redeeming factor is the fun outlet. Other than that, he is useless. His passive regen is hardly helpful, and it's more so there for his tactical, which makes it even worse as his tactical is trash. But it is so loud when you stim that I reckon I can hear you from about 50 meters away. If you ever find yourself stimming then fighting, your aim is skewed. His ult is fine, but you're so slow on that pad compared to something like a party zipline nowadays. Definitely needs a buff on every part of his kit for me. Again, it's only a 2-person tier, and for me it's Ashe that's also E tier. She did just receive a buff to her tether, but honestly, it's still not good enough. It's still so easily avoidable, and I don't think it's viable without a rework. Her passive is just not it either. Yeah, it can help by showing death boxes, but any fight close enough to actually get a beneficial third party from, you can hear anyway with your own 2 ears. Also, marking death boxes are more of an ability for the enemy teams around you rather than yourself, as any good player knows exactly what death box you just marked and that comes back for you. Thankfully for Ashe mains, the ultimate is good. It can definitely provide a good outlet away from an incoming team, or even better, used to push after a knock or enter as a third partying team. Now for the C tier legends, which will start with Fuse. Fuse can be a pretty good legend, but is so niche in situations that hardly arise. Sadly, his ultimate and passive are just not good enough and need buffs or even reworks. His passive is very weak, stacking nades is cool if they're in a building, but most of the time nades are easily avoided. Personally, I think the nade should have a very small damage increase for Fuse to make him viable. It's the same problem with his mother led too, way too easy to avoid. Personally, I would change it so the ring of fire is actually filled with flames rather than leaving a safe place in the middle of it. His tactical is fire though, pun intended. Can break doors, cause major damage and panic, and knock players when used correctly. Next in line is CAUSTIC, who for me has a fall from grace personally. Back when you couldn't shoot out his traps, he was a must pick for high ranks. Could completely control a small space and change the tides in any battle. However, sadly he is easily countered by just bullets, or even just the one bullet at times. For me, they need to remove the insta break on the traps, but not have it as OP as it once was. The damage from the traps are fine, same with his ultimate and passive. It's just that one detail that could be improved. The only other aspect I think that you could change is his ultimate in a small way, where the gas instantly explodes hitting the ground rather than the timer. The last legend on C tier is going to be Vantage, which I know a lot of people won't agree with. For me, I don't see a meta with Vantage at all. She isn't bad, don't get me wrong, but there's no way Vantage works fight after fight. Yeah, you can down somebody with her ult and push, ultimately winning it, but if you're third party, she offers nothing to the team but a 30-meter escape for herself only. And even then you have to wait for the bat to get into position, then hopefully not bug out like it has been since her release. Her passive is actually not that bad, but only on weapons that aren't her ult. You might get that intel scoping in with that thing, but oh my god, is that orange line noticeable. One thing that I'll give her is that little blue dot that tells you where to aim. That's a real nice addition. Right, the B tier legends, where we begin with Lifeline. After her buff, she has taken new heights, at least for me. I did have her down with the others last season, but they've gotten rid of two issues I had with her by giving her a cleaner revive and a faster ultimate. Lifeline should be the best reviver in the game, but sadly she still isn't. However, you aren't slowed when reviving teammates, it's a step in the right direction. Her tactical has gotten better with every season, and I feel like it doesn't get better without a rework now. It's still pretty good though, especially after fights or during them with how far it reaches now. Her ultimate is a good loot source though. Fast and clean is what I've always wanted for a while now. Still though, I think the blue beam needs to go. Here's probably the most controversial rating, which is Wraith at B tier. My opinion is that she is so heavily overrated, it's not even funny. Before I go into the negatives, I will just say that her tactical is great. It's awesome for that entry roll so you're able to do damage or a knock and reset without getting touched. Sadly for you Wraith mains, that's where it ends though. Even with a buff, her portal is incredibly niche. I'm not saying it's useless, but nearly every other mobility ability is more useful. It's good for going to and from positions where there isn't an easy way to it at least. Her passive though is so bad. Second worst passive in the game for me. 99% of the time it's just her voices telling you you're getting aimed at 1 second before you're domed by a sniper. It needs an immediate rework. Mirage is the next legend in B tier, and again like Lifeline, he was lower, but with his recent buffs he has reached a new level. Mirage has always been a good reviver, but has always been lackluster in terms of his tomfoolery, which is arguably his whole kit. You get a scam when somebody shoots a decoy, you now have a greater use for them. Not only that, but his new and improved revive has now boosted him to, in my opinion, the best revive in the entire game. Giving the newly res teammates invincibility is a game changer, and brings meaning to pulling off those insane plays. Still, the UI of his decoys need improvement, especially his ultimate as his circle, like formation, is not extremely practical. But this is all a step in the right direction for Mirage and their player base. A legend that might deserve a higher place is Newcastle, but again I've opted for B tier. He has a lot of class abilities, branching from his shielded revive to his moving tactical. But at the end of the day, for me, he's worse than Gibby. Both legends fill the same niche, and for me Newcastle's lack a little bit more in that department. Personally, Newcastle's revive is better, but that's it. Everything else is not as good as Gibraltar's kit. The mobile shield needs more health, it's way too easy to shoot out. It can be effective for sure, but not in every situation it should be. And the biggest negative for me is the ultimate. It hardly provides cover for the team, and can be disorientating for the teammate you land on. One benefit, however, is having mobility, but it's hardly mobility at the same time. Still a class legend at the end of the day. And the hardest legend for me to put here is Mad Maggie. She is so close to A tier, and even at the top of it too. It's just a couple of things that hurt her. Firstly, the positives, which is mainly her drill. It has an insane range and a heavy hitting tick rate too. If you're able to catch a lacking enemy with her drill, you have an easy knock in your hands. Her wrecking ball is actually insane on enemies too. If you get hit by that massive ball, you're in a world of strife. But the ball is actually a reason why she isn't A tier too. The fact it can bash into your teammates so easily and do most of the negative effects to them as if they were an enemy is off-putting. Also, her passive, being locked to one class, is restricting and can really hurt you. Being forced to use shotties is not the way forward. Now for the A tier legends, and we'll kick it off with WATTSON, who is always underrated. I didn't think she was a good legend when I first started, but I slowly and surely understood her role and what her pylon could bring to the battle. Honestly, her ultimate is one of the best ults in the game. It can destroy every single projectile in the game, from arc stars to Gibby ults and even bang smokes. Also, the regen rate on the ult is very quick, making it great for fighting a team when you're playing cover. Her fences are really good for enclosed fights. They can seem lackluster in open range fights, but ultimately they are still not bad. However, what makes her not S tier is her passive. As the regen rate is so slow, it's seriously not even worth it. The insta charge on the ult accelerants is nice though. Alright, you guys are gonna hate me for this one, but Crypto is A tier. I know for a fact a lot of you have this guy near the bottom, but in the kindest way possible, it's because you don't know his abilities. He directly counters most legends in the game, as his EMP destroys so many abilities whilst also doing 50 damage per player. His drone scan is not as good as SEER or Bloodhound, yeah, that's true, but used correctly can still provide a brief scan going into a fight, which is still very nice to have. Crypto is also a cheat code of having the support and recon legend classes in one, as he can grab banners, respawn without moving a muscle. Sadly still, he will never be S tier with how dependent he is on the drone only, and needs to rework on all of that. But his peak is still better than what most people think it is. The third legend in A tier is Pathfinder, who's had a resurgence and a half. We all love Pathfinder for how funny he is to play, but now with an improved ult and a simplified passive, he has really gone up a level. I've always said that Pathfinder's grapple is one of the best abilities in the game, and it still is. Using it similar to Rev's phase is so clutch. Get a knock and grapple to a better position, then the fight is yours to lose. Now his passive is something I've defended before the quote unquote buff. For me, this change is more of a simplifier than a buff. You were still able to get consecutive ziplines beforehand, this change now makes it easier to get ultimates. His ult is something that did in fact get buffed though. The speed is a nice thing to have on the zip, but I think the distance of the ultimate really takes the cake nowadays. I teased this when I was talking about Newcastle, but I have Gibraltar at A tier. For a while he was S tier, but recent counters have come up reducing him down a tier. Still a great legend though. His gun shield is something most people still underestimate. It's 50 extra shield when shooting him at the front. Off drop, it's like having a purple shield. It's not. His dome is still a fantastic ability too, although his revive is something being outmatched by other legends such as Newcastle and Mirage. Sadly, it's his ultimate that's the worst ability he has, which is funny to any new player as it does so much damage when it hits. It is way too avoidable though, which is where he lags. As I said before as well, counters to his bubble like Maggie and Crypto are making him less playable by the seasons. Horizon is another A tier legend, not an S tier, which most people would think. Now that a lot of people have realised you can shoot at her ultimate, that part of her kit has taken a huge hit, and can no longer be a good entry to a fight. I actually think it's best used to block entry points in enemies' vision, so you can get away and heal up or protect your teammates. Her passive is something that most people think is incredibly practical, but in reality it's more for fun. Don't get me wrong, it's great for nullifying that initial jolt when landing, but people out here saying it's the best passive should not be talking too loud. Her best part of her kit though is the gravity lift, as it can be a quick and simple way to gain height on your enemies, or even block doors so you can get away. Especially on maps like Stormpoint, Horizon does excel. Now the next two A tier legends could be S tier very easily, but for me have something negative weighing them down. Firstly, Bangalore, she's A tier. I love playing her so much. She is so complete with what she has, her passive is insane, can make you incredibly hard to hit and you will win your 1v1s every time. Her ultimate is always misused, but when using it correctly to either position yourself, your team, or your enemies to where you want them to be, it can be so helpful. Her smoke is such a great reset tool, and again, mostly misused. Using it to blind enemies rather than yourself can really be the best repositioning tool in the game. However, it's her smoke making her A tier and not S tier, as it removes aim assist. It's such a disappointing addition to her kit, because without it, she's one of, if not the best legend in the game. The last legend on A tier, and this is a big debate whether they should be on A or S, is Bloodhound. Now, pre-nerf Hound would be S tier full stop, but now that they got nerfed, it's obvious that they are just lacking in the scan department, compared to you-know-who. Their ultimate really took the biggest hit though. For me, it needed to. Now that you can't have an insane amount of scans, their ultimate is more of a thermal scope now. The tactical took a hit too. Now it doesn't give off that insane wall hack, but still is a great use to have on your team. The passive is a weird one though. In my opinion, it's a buff more of a nerf. However, still lacks to other passives in the game. Overall, they're still a solid pick, just not as good as they used to be. Okay, now we're on to S tier, the best of the bunch, which will begin with a newcomer in Catalyst. She's a legend that in my own eyes didn't deserve to be this high at first. That was until I seen how good she is in good players' hands. Building fights, she's the queen. She can dictate entire fights and stop enemies coming inside. The continuous rebuilds of doors is so clutch, and facing a goo to hurt intruders from the other side is so insane to me. Her best ability is that gigantic black wall though. Use it on an entry or exit point, or maybe even better yet, the final circles, and you can't be fooled. If somebody tries to fight you through it, they'll either be blinded doing so, or be shooting blindly from their side. As long as this wall is not nerfed, she will forever be S tier. Now this might be a surprise to most, as she received a massive nerf not long ago, but Valkyrie is all the same in this game, and I have her S tier. So many people left her and went to Horizon in those patch notes, but she was in fact hardly touched. Her passive is still an awesome way to work around fights in multiple levels, especially when evading legends with no mobility, as it can give you a way to heal and get back into the fight. Her tactical has always had a downside to indoor fights, but in any building with a high roof, it can still be heavily impactful. It can create massive damages and cause easy knocks. Now for her ult, which is the best positioning tool in the entire game, by far. You don't go as far as you used to, but nonetheless it's nutty still. Travelling as far as you do with it can create a safe haven for your squad and can avoid any problematic scenarios. I think this is the first time LOBA has been rated this highly by everybody, but she deserves it with how impactful she's become. Her ultimate is something I've vouched for since I first played her. The fact that you can grab infinite ammo and pick up 2 items of your choice every 90 seconds is really overpowered if you think about it. If you use their black marker for only half the game, you end up with 12 items and infinite ammo. That's crazy. Her bracelet is such an underrated movement tool. Look, it will never be one of the best ways to move around the map, but it's definitely not one of the worst ways either. Using it to relocate back to your team or onto height will either keep you safe or change the way the fight was going to go completely. Sadly, her passive is just okay. Can definitely be helpful, but overall lacks a bit of quality. Now for the best legend in the game, and you all know who it is. And if you don't, you've been blessed with lobbies without this guy. SEER is broken, and I'm sorry, doesn't belong in the game the way that he works. He received a big nerf this season, and is still a massive problem. His passives is just wall hacks. Yes, that's actually a thing. Put that into perspective, Rampart gets 5 extra bullets on a Spitfire. It's nuts. His tactical would be fine if it just stopped abilities and revives, but the fact that it shows health and shield and shows you exactly where they are for a few seconds is insanity. And don't get me started on his ultimate. I feel violated when I'm captured inside one of his domes. They know my exact movements the entire time, and I can do nothing but hope they don't know how to shoot their weapon to have a chance at them. And that's the tier list, guys. What do you think about it? What did you disagree with? What did you agree with? Some legends like Newcastle and Maggie were hard to put as low as I put them, but it was hard because I didn't want to have too many legends in A tier. It would have been like 10 legends. These lists are mostly opinionated and not factual, so please don't take any of this to heart. So I'm keen to know what you think about the list. Hopefully you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you again in the next one.